Good evening. I am Ethan Spalding, a member of the Social Equity Program team. I will be your moderator for tonight's session. Welcome to this webinar sponsored by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulation, Business Licensing and Compliance Assistance Program. BLC programming is designed to assist social equity applicants in the City of Los Angeles with obtaining a commercial cannabis license and operating a successful cannabis business. This installment of our 2024 late summer webinar series focuses on predatory practices, partnership issues, and vetting partnerships. Now, before we get started, let's take a moment to review some housekeeping rules. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and can be viewed only on DCR's learning management system after the editing process. You will be muted with cameras off for the duration of the webinar. This means that your camera and audio functions will not be available to you during this session. However, you will be able to see and hear all the panelists. There is an open chat box where you can interact with one another for networking or comment on the information being presented. Please use caution when sharing personal information in a public forum and keep your questions focused on tonight's topic. Please ask questions about tonight's subject matter in the Q&A box. We are gathering and responding to your questions throughout the presentation, and we'll have a Q&A session where you will also get responses in the last portion of tonight's event. Finally, please note that tonight's content was not created by the Department of Cannabis Regulation or the City of Los Angeles and is for informational purposes only. This information is subject to change and does not replace or supersede the Los Angeles Municipal Code, nor constitute legal advice. If you have specific questions outside of tonight's topic, please call 213-978-0738 during business hours, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. to speak to a DCR representative. And now, I'd like to introduce our esteemed guest presenter, Zachary Knox, Managing Partner at Knox and Ross Law Group. Mr. Ross has been practicing law in the cannabis industry for 12 years. He is a co-founder and managing partner of Knox and Ross Law Group. Mr. Knox is intimately familiar with the California cannabis industry and is nationally recognized as an expert in the field of cannabis law and regulation. Mr. Knox previously served on the City of Oakland's Cannabis Regulatory Commission, and his firm, the Knox and Ross Law Group, has been the contract legal services provider for several of the cannabis technical assistance programs across California as well in other states. Welcome, Zachary Knox.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Ethan. And I could not be more pleased to be back with you here tonight to discuss such an important topic. Predatory practices, partnership issues, and how to go about vetting partners as you explore how to grow your business. This is something that's really crucial. We're in a new industry and it's an expanding marketplace. And I cannot tell you how important it is to choose the right business partners in order for your organization to survive. Choosing the wrong partners can have long-lasting impacts on your business and your ability to move forward. But tonight we'll be exploring some of the unique challenges that are faced in doing this in the cannabis sector. We will identify some of the common types of predatory behavior so that you can be on the lookout for them. And we will provide some strategies about how to protect your business. And for those of you who have been to some of these webinars in the past, you will know that we've touched on some of these issues already, but I could not be happier that tonight we're going to do a deep dive on this issue because it is that important. So the topics we're going to be covering tonight: the importance of choosing the right business partner, the risks you'll face with predatory partnerships, the common types of predatory partners that are out there, certain red flags that you should be on the lookout for, due diligence, best practices, and some of the protective measures you can take in advance to protect your business. and then we'll wrap up with talking about how we build positive partnerships. We've got quite a bit of material to get through tonight, so I'm going to jump right into it, and hopefully we'll have time for Q&A here at the end. All right, so choosing the right business partners. A lot of us come into this thinking that we need a capital partner to bring in money and help finance the business. And while that is true and incredibly important, money should not be the singular consideration about who we partner with. So some of the things that we should be thinking about as we consider partners are whether or not they have complementary skills to our own skill set, what other resources they may be able to bring to the table, what networks they're connected with that we might be able to tap that can help accelerate our growth. Good partners contribute to effective decision-making, and they help shape positive company culture and can open new doors and new opportunities for your business. Conversely, the wrong partners will inevitably lead to conflicts, misaligned goals, and as you'll see in some of the examples tonight, eventually financial and legal trouble. And again, I'm going to say this throughout the night. Ultimately, having the right partners can be a catalyst for success, while the wrong partners can bear significant obstacles, if not tank your venture outright. So again, getting into how partners can make or break your business. Complementary skills and resources. The right partner can bring crucial expertise and assets and fill in the gaps where your own capabilities don't meet all of your business's needs. This will dramatically increase your business's chance for success. You don't need somebody who does everything that you do or knows everything that you know. The good partner will fill in some of those gaps or some of those weaknesses that you have when it comes to running your own business. Of course, there's a financial impact. As equity businesses, we know we need to bring in the capital. And so having the right partners often means that they are going to contribute capital to the business, which is crucial for getting our businesses started and getting them up and running. Where conversely, a financially irresponsible partner will do the exact opposite and tank the business. The partner's network and connections are incredibly important. Strong partners can open the doors to new clients. They can open the doors to suppliers, better suppliers. They may be able to introduce you to additional investors. However, partners with a poor reputation probably can do none of those things, right? And when it comes to decision-making and strategy, aligned partners who have the same mission and the same goals that you have will often result in reaching faster and better decisions in conjunction with you, where if there's a misalignment between you and your partners, there's often gridlock, and the business really struggles to move forward. And this can carry over even to once your business is operating and you're no longer in the startup phase. A good partner will contribute to positive company culture and morale and will ensure that your workers, your employees, are happy to come into work and help you grow your business. Whereas a toxic partner can lead to high employee turnover. They can lead to labor claims and harassment claims by employees and really hurt the company's culture and the company's morale. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is that the early partnership decisions that you make will inevitably have long-term impacts on your business. The long-term consequences of early partnership decisions can go well beyond day-to-day operations and influence your company's strategic direction, your company's reputation, and your company's ability to attract talent or to attract investment. Early partnership choices often set the tone for your business and its future. And it makes it a crucial and important approach. And this decision should be made with careful consideration, thorough vetting, and a clear understanding of your shared values, vision, and mission. And we're going to get into some of that tonight. Here on this slide, I want to give you a couple examples of how early partner decisions can have long-term impacts on your business. And I've selected these two companies because they are companies that likely everybody in this room has heard of. The positive example is Apple. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak founded Apple in 1976. Wozniak was sort of a technical guru, and Jobs was the visionary and had a background in marketing skills. The positive impact of their synergy laid the foundation for what is now one of the world's most valuable companies. Conversely, the Snapchat story, if you remember that company, it was started by Evan Spiegel, Bobby Murphy, and Reggie Brown. And one of the early decisions that they made in that partnership was to exclude Mr. Brown, although Mr. Brown claimed that he had come up with the original idea for Snapchat. What resulted out of that dispute was a lengthy lawsuit and ultimately a settlement to the tune of $157 million plus. And I'm not even sure if Snapchat is still around today. So it gives you an idea how handling partnership decisions early on can ultimately lead a company to success or lead a company to stagnation and potentially failure. All right, so let's get specific here. Let's talk about some of the risks that predatory partners bring to the table. And some of you may have experienced some of this already, and it may sound familiar as we go through them. Obviously, when you're dealing with predators, there are financial risks, but there are also operational risks and reputational risks. And these different types of risks often interconnect with each other. For example, if a partner commits a financial fraud using the business, this can lead to regulatory investigations, which can hamper your operations, and negative media coverage, which can damage the reputation of your business. I hope this underscores the importance of carefully vetting partners and potential partners and establishing strong governance structures from the outset of your business to try to avoid some of these risks. Let's talk about these risks in a little more detail. Some of the financial risks that you may face with a predatory partner is the misappropriation of funds. They might divert company resources for their personal gain. Sometimes we see in this industry where a partner will join a company and insist that they use their supply chain, their management team, their marketing team. And there are cases where that can be good, but there are cases where those sort of arrangements have been used to divert profitability out of the cannabis business and to that partner's own separate businesses. So we got to be on the lookout for whether or not there's going to be a misappropriation of funds. Fraudulent activities is another one. Oftentimes, more often than probably should be the case, equity applicants are allowing their capital partners to have day-to-day operational control of the business. And that may work if the partner really knows what they're doing and has experience doing this. But there have been horror stories in the past where the partner doesn't have a clue, and tax funds end up missing, other funds end up missing, financial statements end up being doctored, tax returns end up being doctored, and ultimately your company may be at risk of audit in what is already an industry that is disproportionately audited more often than any other industry that I can think of. Another example of financial risks is overbilling and inflating of expenses. This can happen again if a partner is insisting that you use some of their ancillary businesses to help support the cannabis operation, but it can also happen within your own operation. They may charge excessive fees for their own services. They may inflate their business expenses. Maybe they bought that first class plane ticket to a trade show instead of buying a coach ticket, knowing that the company's resources were slim, right? It could be as simple as that. Other financial risks include poor investment decisions. Partners may push a high risk investment that benefits them personally, but may or may not benefit your business. And finally, there's debt accumulation. This is another biggie. A lot of times capital partners will come in and they don't want to buy their equity. They want their equity assigned in exchange for making capital available in the form of debt, right? Don't get me wrong. I think there is room in this industry for hybrid cap tables where some of the capital coming in is equity and some of the capital coming in is debt. But some of these businesses have been laden with so much debt out the gate that it's unsustainable. And it almost ensures that the business will not see the level of financial success that it needs anytime soon. And this could lead to delays and you as the equity partner seeing any value or any distributions coming out of your business. Now we're going to move on to some of the operational risks. Some of the operational risks that predatory partners pose include sabotage of the business process. A partner who is disgruntled and not happy with the situation might intentionally disrupt operations to try to leverage some personal gain. I have seen this specifically in partnership disputes in this industry here in California. Partners have called in and called the DCC and asked to have licenses suspended without going through proper procedure. Partners have talked to landlords and insisted that other partners be locked out of premises until their partnership dispute can be resolved. These are all actions that sabotage the business. Another operational risk would be intellectual property theft. Some of you have great brand ideas and you'll take them to a capital partner and you'll get a business started and the capital partner will finagle away for that branding or that intellectual property to become theirs if the company tanks or if they seek an exit or somehow take the rights to that away from you. Another operational risk, and this happens commonly as well, is conflicts in decision making. Partners may try to block important decisions from being made or may try to force harmful decisions if they're in the middle of a dispute with you about how to run the business or if they feel like they're not getting as much out of the business as they should be. Another common operational risk for those who have partners running the business on their behalf is the neglect of responsibilities. Sometimes partners just fail to fulfill their end of the agreement and they fail to live up to their roles and duties. And then if you're not careful about how you structure your deal with them and how you structure the governance of your organization, you may find that it's very hard to remove them at that point. And finally, we talked about predatory partners who may damage the culture of the company or the reputation of the company. This can often result in high employee turnover, right? A partner's behavior, particularly in the workplace, and I'm thinking of some examples right now, can lead to a toxic work environment, causing valuable employees to leave, or even worse, setting up a situation where those employees may have labor claims or harassment claims that they want to bring against the business based on the action of an individual partner. So those are things that we need to be on the lookout for when predatory partners are involved. Those are the sort of operational risks that they may present. And then finally, reputational risks. An unethical action by a partner can damage your brand image and tarnish the company's reputation. And even if you can somehow carve that partner out, that doesn't necessarily salvage the damage that has already been done. Okay. And similarly to damaging the brand image, you can lose customer trust. Predatory behavior, if exposed, can lead to a loss of customer confidence in your business. It can also lead to negative media attention, which circularly can damage your brand image and also lead to a loss of customer trust. Predatory partners in decision making can also strain relationships with your other stakeholders. If you have other partners or even stakeholders outside of the business, whether it's regulators that you're working with or suppliers that you're working with, if they lose faith in your company, even if you can X out that predatory partner, it may be really hard to salvage the company's reputation at that point. And then finally, if you have a bad reputation, the chances are that it's more likely than not that you will see additional regulatory scrutiny. An unethical partner can attract that sort of attention from regulatory bodies. This can lead to investigations, potentially sanctions, fines, and in a worst case scenario, the suspension or revocation of your operating permit or state license. So now I want to move on and talk about some of the common types of predatory partners that we see out there. And there's 4 we're going to talk about tonight. I call them the financial exploiters, the intellectual property thieves, the reputation riders, and the control seekers. And we're going to talk about each of them in turn. Okay, so financial exploiters. These are the partners who will misuse company funds and resources. Without mentioning the company name, I will share a story of a partner in an equity business. The equity business received a grant to help prop up its business, and within a week of seeing that grant, and I'll just say that this was in the early part of the year. Within a week of receiving that grant, the predatory partner was spotted on screen sitting in the low rows at the Super Bowl. And so and when the regulators came in and tried to vet how that grant funds were used, the partners could not say and were unwilling to say how those grant funds were spent. So that's just a real world tale of how partners may misuse company resources. Another example is they might manipulate financial statements for personal gain. The next type of predatory partner are the intellectual property thieves. These are partners who will steal your ideas. They will steal other ideas. They will infringe on proprietary information. They will co-opt somebody else's branding and try to run with it. And all that can put your business at risk. Conversely, there's also intellectual property thieves who try to claim sole ownership over concepts and ideas that were developed jointly with you and not allocate any of your contribution, not recognize any of your contribution to that development. They try to take all the credit for themselves. So that's who I consider to be the intellectual property thieves. The reputation riders, on the other hand, are partners who will leverage any early success of the company for their own personal branding, whether it's individually or for their marketing company or their management company, or just to promote themselves as a guru instead of promoting the business that you guys are working together jointly to develop. These are partners who take credit for other people's work and try to take sole credit for the company's achievements. The control seekers, on the other hand, and I bring them up last because if you have been out there trying to communicate with prospective partners in this industry, I almost guarantee you have ran into some control seekers. This industry is flooded with them. And these are the partners who try to dominate decision-making. These are the partners who try to manipulate the ownership structure of the business so that they have more control than what would otherwise be due to them. This is a very common tactic in this industry, in particular when it comes to the equity segment of the cannabis industry. So everyone here should be on the lookout for those control seekers. So now that we've identified some of the common types of predatory partners, let's dip into some of the specific red flags that I want each of you to be on the lookout for. These red flags include, but are not limited to, a lack of transparency, pressure to make quick decisions, unbalanced contribution expectations, inconsistent communications, and an unwillingness to formalize agreements. These are all red flags. And again, we'll talk about them in turn. So when I say a lack of transparency, these are partners who are reluctant to share their personal or professional background. They often give you vague or evasive answers about their past business experience. Another red flag is the pressure to make quick decisions. If an important decision has come up, you are within your rights to take your time to consider it, to get advice on it from counsel you trust, whether that's legal counsel, whether that's tax counsel, financial counsel, whether that's regulatory compliance advisors. Take your time and get the advice you need to be comfortable with the decision that you make. These partners will try to rush you into making quick business decisions and often create artificial time pressure or deadlines that's not really there. That is an immediate red flag that you might not be working with the right person. Unbalanced contribution expectations is another red flag. And I want to be clear what I mean about this, because in terms of financial contributions to our equity businesses, we do expect the capital partner to make a larger contribution of capital than the equity partners will make. So I want to be real clear that that's not what I'm talking about when I say unbalanced contribution expectations. What I'm talking about are promises of making large contributions with little evidence that they have the ability to do so. And another example would be expectations of high returns for minimal input, minimal contribution. Okay. If a partner is unwilling to put up all the money to get a business started, but wants you to dilute down to your minimum level, then their expectations are unbalanced and out of alignment. For partners who promise that they can fully fund your business, but are unwilling to produce evidence that they have those funds available and that they are able to commit them, that's another example of unbalanced contribution expectation. Another red flag is inconsistent communications. Partners who frequently change their plans or frequently want to revise their commitments, chances are they are not really committed, and this may be a predator lying in wait. Partners who have difficulty maintaining regular and clear communication is also a sign of them being an inconsistent communicator type predator. You guys are partners in the business. And I tell folks that a business partnership is almost like a marriage, particularly once equity has changed hands. And if they can't talk to you regularly, if their communication is not clear with you, then chances are they are not the right partner. And the final red flag that we're going to talk about here, and it's probably an obvious one, are the partners that are unwilling to formalize their agreements. They might be resistant to putting terms in writing. They might want to avoid legal counsel or entering into former contracts. And they may have attorneys, but they don't want you to get legal counsel. They don't want you to have your own separate representation. Another form that we see this present itself as is they will insist that your governing documents be plain vanilla, but they will make additional promises to you outside of those documents, and they won't want to necessarily formalize those promises. This might be to, for example, that if you are partnering with somebody in a dispensary, a storefront dispensary, they might promise that they'll carry your own separate brand, or they might promise to dedicate a portion of their shelf space to exclusively equity products. But they don't want that written down anywhere in any formal agreement. This is another example of the sort of red flags that you should be on the lookout for. And on this slide, you will just see some other signs of predatory behavior, right? They're a capital investor, but they cannot produce proof of funds. They're engaged in what we call steering or targeting, where they try to get you to enter into deals with related parties, whether it's IP licensing or whether it's a real estate leasing arrangement with their landlord buddy, or management agreements or vendor and service provider agreements. Now, any of these things in isolation could be perfectly fine. But if your partner is steering you towards them, then they need to be reviewed with extra scrutiny to make sure that you're not being taken advantage of. Another sign of predatory behavior would be unreasonably disproportionate financial preferences. What you will find as you negotiate with capital partners is that they will insist upon some level of preference when it comes to distribution or liquidation, and often until they can recoup some measure of their investment. What we do as legal advisors is try to review those in advance and determine whether or not any such preference is unreasonably disproportionate to what they should otherwise get. If there is a preference that you've agreed to, if that preference doesn't sunset, despite the investor having a complete return on their capital, that's predatory. If what your partners are contributing is debt capital, and there are penalties for paying it off early or selling the business before a certain time, that's predatory. if they insist upon you making a personal guarantee on their capital coming in, knowing that by definition as equity, you are under-resourced, that's predatory. If they want to charge you big fees for negotiating and closing deals with other investors, that is predatory. And if they want to execute hush side deals, or even side deals in general that they don't want, let's say, the DCR to know about, it's likely that those are predatory. So we've reviewed several signs of predatory behavior and several red flags that you should be on the lookout for. Let's spend a little time talking about how we counteract some of this behavior. And it starts with due diligence. So we're going to talk about some of the due diligence best practices that we want you to employ. And for those of you that are unaware, due diligence is a critical process for identifying and avoiding the predatory partners that we just talked about. It involves a comprehensive investigation of who those partners are, their background, their professional history, criminal record checks in some cases, and financial audits if they are promising a significant amount of capital. Some of the key practices that we're going to talk about is conducting reference checks, verifying assets and investment monies, and analyzing their past business ventures and how those businesses fared. A systematic approach to due diligence should reveal red flags or other signs of predatory behavior. Okay, and that may be the best that we can hope for. A predator is not going to come out and just admit that they're operating outside of your best interest. But if you do a good job conducting your diligence, you should at least uncover some red flags if those red flags are present. Let's talk about some of these best practices. First is background checks. You want to verify their professional history. If they're telling you they've been in this industry for a long time, I'm telling you it's a small industry. Somebody should know them. Criminal record checks. To even be in this industry, you have to pass a background check, right? And if you don't pass the background check, there is an opportunity for you to sort of rectify your record and try to get approval anyway. But if there is something in their history that leads you to believe that they are not trustworthy, I'm not talking about cannabis offenses or other minor offenses. If there is something in their background that suggests they're not trustworthy, that is a red flag. And even if you're not capable or you don't have the resources to conduct a full background check, then at the very least, you should be conducting reference checks. Ask them about their past businesses. Ask them about their previous partners or their employers and contact those individuals. Again, if they represent that they have been in this industry for a while, this is a very small industry. They should have peers in this industry, and you should seek industry references from them about them individually and about their past businesses. Some other due diligence best practices would be financial verification. This is incredibly important for your money partners. I've seen far too many deals get signed where the partners pledge to bring in the capital and then don't deliver. And in some cases, if the documents are not right from the gate, just because they failed to deliver doesn't mean that you can automatically get rid of them. So even if you have your documents right, you still need to go through a financial verification process. This may be asking them for credit reports, but I think more importantly, it's about asking them for financial statements. It's about asking them for proof of funds, if you will. You need to verify whatever assets they claim they're going to bring to the business. And you need to verify that they have whatever investment funds they say they are going to contribute to the business. You need to know that those funds are ready and available. And finally, track record analysis. If they've been in this industry, examine their past business ventures and how those businesses are now faring. If they have a number of other businesses that are successful, that's a good sign. If they have another number of other businesses that are failing, on the other hand, and you're their third or fourth time around, that might not be the partner for you. And you need to assess the pattern of their business relationships. If they are introducing you to their network of suppliers and their network of investors, do you see red flags from the people that they're introducing you to? Because if they're introducing you to other predators, chances are they might be a predator too. Okay? So to sum up, by rigorously applying these due diligence practices, you can really reduce the risk of entering into predatory partnerships, which may harm your business. So in addition to due diligence, I want to talk about some specific protective measures that can be taken. Okay? And when I mean by protective measures, these are essential safeguards that can minimize the risk of a potentially predatory partnership. Now, again, these predators may not reveal themselves early on, which is why you have to look for red flags and other signs. They may not reveal their predatory nature right away. So in addition to doing your due diligence, having measures in place can help protect your business. And these measures include developing clear and comprehensive written agreements that outline roles, responsibilities, and expectations for everyone involved. They should establish equitable profit sharing and ownership structures. They should ensure fairness and alignment of interests and implement a well-defined decision-making process. Ideally, they should also limit authority where necessary. And in certain governing documents, we also like to see the incorporation of exit clauses, dispute resolution mechanisms, and frameworks for addressing conflicts or even dissolving the partnership if necessary. So let's talk about some of these. Clear written agreements. Your agreements should be comprehensive. Far too many partners have come to my office and their partnership agreement is written on one page or 2 pages, or it may not even call itself an agreement. It might be letter of intent. Just to back up, from a legal perspective, we often use letters of intent or MOUs, a memorandum of understanding, as a preliminary step in negotiating a larger, more definitive agreement. There's nothing wrong with entering into an LOI or an MOU. What I'm advising you of here is that the process should not stop there. You need to get to what we would call a definitive, comprehensive agreement. This should be a detailed contract that covers specific aspects of your business. Another protective measure is to clearly define roles and responsibilities. This may be clear job descriptions or drawing clear lines of authority. But it should also include the documenting of the decision-making process. I've seen partnerships fall into disputes where they had a board meeting or a manager meeting and no minutes were taken. Nothing was written down about how the decision was made. And now that there's a partnership dispute, it is a he said, she said situation. Good luck resolving that. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to document your decision-making process. If you have a board meeting, there should be minutes, whether they're in writing or if you do your board meetings on Zoom, hit the record button and have everybody agree that we're going to record our board meetings. Because you need to document how decisions were made. Other protective measures, equitable profit sharing and ownership structures. There should be a fair distribution of profits based on the contributions made to the business. And you may have heard me say this in some of the other presentations. Often your contributions as the equity partner go undervalued. Far too many capital partners look at equity programs as a handout and do not recognize the actual value that you bring to the table. Whether that value comes in the form of fee waivers, whether that value comes in the form of tax abatement, whether that value comes in the form of grant eligibility, whether that value comes in the form of intellectual property that you're bringing to the table, whether that value comes in the form of your own labor. There needs to be a fair distribution of profits based on the value of contributions. And there needs to be a clear equity structure. And oftentimes, in certain cases, that equity should vest over time. If the partner is going to be contributing capital over time, their equity should vest over time, or at least ratably along with that capital coming in. And finally, the last protective measure I want to talk about is exit clauses and dispute resolution. You want to predetermine and agree in advance how you are going to handle conflicts and resolve those conflicts. If it starts with negotiation, fine. If we move to mediation next, fine. If we go to arbitration after that, fine. If we jump over all of that and go straight to court, that is likely what we don't want to do. We don't want to have to resort to going to court because we didn't think about how to handle disputes in advance. Another way to address disputes is to have a clear procedure for partners to exit the business or for the business to dissolve if the partner dispute is at an impasse. And good legal counsel can help ensure that those things do show up in your governing documents. The last thing I want to touch on tonight is building positive partnerships. And I think this is really important. And I don't want to end on a downer. And when we're talking about predatory partners, a lot of this is a downer. But I want everybody to walk away thinking that that you have an ability to build positive partnerships for your business. And again, it is critically important for your business to have a positive partnership relationship as you move forward. So this process will focus on cultivating mutually beneficial collaborations based on shared values, complementary skills, and aligned vision. The key elements that we're going to talk about include open and honest communication, establishing trust through consistent action, and creating an environment of mutual respect. If your partner does not respect you, they are not the right partner for you. Successful partnerships involve partners who not only fill in each other's gaps, but also challenge each other to grow and innovate. Now, this doesn't mean that you and your partners won't have disagreement, that you and your partners won't butt heads and argue. That can happen even in a very healthy partnership. But at the end of the day, what you should ask yourself is there trust in this partnership? Is there honest communication in this partnership? And do we mutually respect each other? So, building positive partnerships, again, I think it's important to have shared values and vision. Aligning on the ethics of the business and the long-term goals are critical to that. And having regular discussions on the direction of the company and the strategy that the company is going to employ will help maintain shared values and shared vision. I think it's also important to find complementary skills and resources. You don't need a bunch of finance professionals if your business is weak in operations, if your business is weak in human resources and personnel management. Find somebody who has complementary skills. Identify partners who their strength will fill in for your weaknesses. And you want to ensure that there is a diverse skill set within your partnership. Open and honest communication. Establish regular check-ins and update meetings. I have equity partners come to me all the time and say, it's been 8 to 10 months since we had our last meeting. I don't really know what's going on. That's not open and honest communication. Create a culture of transparency and get the partnership comfortable with giving each other feedback. And then finally, mutual respect and trust. Build a relationship with your partner. I said it earlier in this presentation that a business partnership, particularly once equity has traded hands, is like a marriage. Your relationship should be beyond just a transactional nature. Good partners support each other and help each other grow and become better professionals. Good partners recognize and appreciate each partner's contributions. Even in the back of your mind, if you think you've contributed more than another person, you can still recognize, value, and appreciate the contributions they are making. And I think that is instrumental to developing mutual respect and trust amongst the partners. So just to summarize that up, I think regular check-ins, transparency in operations and management, and a commitment to resolving conflicts constructively will help you maintain a healthy partnership. And by prioritizing those aspects, you can create a synergistic relationship with your partners that will drive your business to growth, will enhance your creativity, and hopefully lead to the sustained success of your venture. So to conclude tonight, I hope you've learned a few things, particularly about how to identify predatory partners so that you can avoid them, so that you can recognize red flags and signs of predatory behavior when they present themselves, I hope we've given you an idea about how to conduct due diligence to try to identify these flags and reveal these flags and other behavior. And then, on top of that, employ some of these practices around protective measures, around building positive partnerships. It will benefit your business. And I want to remind you, the process of vetting your partners and nurturing healthy collaborations with them is ongoing. It doesn't start when you first meet and ink the deal. It is an ongoing process. But I think if you employ some of the strategies that we talked about tonight, you should be well equipped to do this. And with that, I thank you all for joining us, and we can open it up for Q&A.
All right. Thank you so much, Zach. That was a lot of great information there. Let's get right to it. So, the first question is, what steps can I take to ensure that someone I'm looking to partner with is trustworthy?
Yeah, so there are a lot of steps that you can take, and I would start by saying, go through some of those due diligence exercises that we just mentioned. If you're introduced to a new prospective partner and you're engaging with them for the first time, it starts with a conversation, but that conversation needs to be focused. Talk to them about their experience. Talk to them about their background, whether that background is in the industry or in another industry. Do they have skills that will translate to what you're doing? Do they have other assets and resources that they can bring to the table? Are they willing to talk to you about those things? Right? And as you go through your checklist, make sure you're paying attention to what they're saying, if not taking notes, because they will give you clues. What businesses have they worked with in the past? What ventures have they started or operated in the past? Because you can go back and double check how those businesses fared, how those ventures fared. You could try to reach out to their former partners or former employers and make sure that they're on the level. But I think that due diligence process is really important. Again, as I said during the presentation, predators are not going to come out and just acknowledge that they're predators out the gate. You're going to have to reveal some of these red flags so that you can identify them. And part of that revelation is going through the due diligence exercises.
Great, great. We just got a question in from the chat. That's a great question from Chris, so I'll ask that. So, what remedies are offered to a social equity applicant who finds themselves in a non-compliant predatory agreement where he or she is required to sell his shares at a predetermined rate?
So that is I would say that any mandatory buyout provision is probably predatory out the gate. Um, I don't think buyout provisions in and of themselves are problematic. I think judicious use of a buyout provision can allow for company exits, which can salvage a business if there's a partnership dispute. But if that buyout is mandatory, that's a problem. And then with regard to a predetermined value, what you'll see is oftentimes buyout provisions will establish a mechanism for how a company is valued, how a partner's interest will be priced, and the method for payment of that purchase price. Those things can be pretty mundane. But I've also seen the other end of the spectrum, and this one I'll share from personal experience. There was a partnership agreement that we were reviewing, and most of the partnership agreement was plain vanilla. There was a buyout clause there, however, though, tucked in, and the partner's 51% uh, could trigger a buyout for a flat $6,000, which was nowhere near the value of that partner's interest. And so if you're seeing something like that, that is clearly predatory. That is clearly taking advantage of you. Another way this may come up is they'll say on liquidation of the company, if the company is sold, they might put a cap on how much your interest will be valued. That is also predatory. I hope that answers Chris's question.
Then there's another question. I'm gonna see if I can paraphrase it. The original question is, should a partner advise a social equity applicant down from tier one to tier two? And I guess what they're trying to say is there anything maybe particularly predatory or wrong with someone who is verified as tier one or tier two, maybe taking less than 51% ownership, but maybe down all the way to 33 and a third, which a tier two person would have to at least own.
Um, so I'm gonna give you the very lawyerly answer to that one, which is maybe, right?
Yeah.
Um, the way I look at this is that if a capital partner is asking you to go from a 51% stake to a 33% stake, that is a significant reduction in your equity stake in the business. And for that, I would expect you to receive commensurate value. So the real question here is if that partner is asking you to move down a tier, what is the rationale? And what value are they offering you for you to make that concession? And if they're not willing to share that information, or if they're not bringing any additional value to you for that concession, then yes, it sounds to me like they're trying to take advantage of you.
It's a great answer. What kind of legal protection is needed to safeguard against partners exiting the business or taking assets?
So some of this is legal and some of this is just practical, right? If a partner is, let me start with the asset side, because I think that's the easier response. If a partner is contributing assets to a business, they should be transferring title to those assets. Those assets should go into the name of the business. The business should own them. If that is part of their contribution, which is justifying their equity position in the business, then those need to be the business's assets. Not that they just make them available for the business's use, but they really still belong to the partner. That's not kosher. That's not really a legal issue. That's a practical business issue. You need to make sure that those assets are titled into the name of the business. The legal side of that might be if it's real estate, the real estate is deeded over. If they're personal property assets, there might need to be an assignment of them. Depending on the assets, those might need to be, the transfer of them might need to be recorded with the county. So some of this will depend on what sort of asset it is. Now, as far as partners exiting the business, I think it's far more problematic if your governing relationship with the partner does not allow for exits. because I'm much more concerned about you being stuck with a bad partner than I am about a bad partner exiting. I want bad partners to exit. And I want your legal agreements to have a framework so that partners can exit. Now, what we should be thinking about and what we should be talking about if we do a consult on this is, what does that exit look like? Right? We don't want partners to just saddle you with a bunch of problems and walk away with a big check. So there is some nuance into how we structure these exits and how they are handled. But in general, the ability to exit is a good thing. Again, partnerships are like a marriage. If it's a bad marriage, you don't want to be stuck in it. You want to be able to get rid of problem partners. You want to have the ability for problem partners to leave.
Great, great. Let's see. Okay, next question. How can social equity cannabis entrepreneurs protect themselves from being taken advantage of by large companies or investors?
Yeah, so let me start with the large companies, because oftentimes equity applicants will be approached by these large MSOs with some very attractive selling points. We'll help you get the real estate, we'll help you with the compliance, we'll put up the capital. We have a well-recognized brand that you can rely on. There's something attractive about that, right? And and I don't want to suggest that you can't do business with large companies, but you should all understand that these large companies are well resourced, they're well protected, they have their own legal counsel. And so some of the things that you should make sure that you do: one, not rely on them for all the advice. Make sure that you have your own legal counsel, whether it's through the pro bono program that is offered down in LA, whether it's retaining your own private counsel, right? Have your own compliance advisor, have your own financial advisor to look at the deal that they're offering you, and make sure that you get your own homework and your own advice on these things. And then when they do present you with their agreements, and oftentimes they will insist on having their counsel draft these agreements, that you make sure that they are reviewed and assessed, and that you get advice on them before you sign your name on anything. Now, when it comes to capital partners, maybe they're individuals and not necessarily attached to one of these MSOs. They may have different interests. What I would advise you to do is to take your time and explore how your relationship with them is going to be structured, so that your interests are protected. Go through your due diligence exercises like we just talked about. Make sure that there are protective measures in your agreements, and try to build a positive partner relationship with that person. If they engage with you on those levels, it could be very fruitful for your business. If you're feeling resistance from them on any of those things I just mentioned, that may be a red flag that they're not the right partner for you.
All right, and we'll end it on this one. So, what can be done if a partner engages in predatory behavior after the agreement is already in place?
It's a very important question, because sometimes that predatory behavior does not present itself till later. So let me start with by saying, if you take some of these preliminary steps that we talked about tonight, you do your due diligence, You make sure your agreements have protective measures. You go through the steps to try to cultivate a positive partnership. If you're doing that out the gate, chances are you will be in a position such that when that predator shows themselves later, you will have the tools in place to address it. But what I'm afraid is being really asked with this question is, if I did none of that and I rushed into a deal with the predator, and now I find out that it's a predatory situation, what do I do? And that is a very precarious position to be in. And unfortunately, I don't have a clear answer for you because it is very circumstance dependent. Your partner may have engaged in some predatory behavior, but is it illegal? Is it actionable? Is it something that you can, try to have a legal fight about? Not always. Not always. Um, the law will protect you against fraud. It won't necessarily protect you against a fool. Right? And so what agreement did you sign? And does it provide recourse? Did they step so far over the line that there's some other legal mechanism that kicks in? Are they such a violator of compliance regulations that maybe the regulator will come in and insist that they need to exit? But that being said, if you don't have your ducks in a row, none of those mechanisms may be foolproof. So it's really important to get out in front of this. Before you enter into that partnership agreement, do the due diligence, do the document review, get the advice, insist on the protective measures. And then after that, do your part and to cultivate a good partnership. And I think that's the best advice that I can give you. In some situations, it can go so wrong that you just need to start over. And I hate to say that, but I'm sure that there are applicants out there who have been in that position. It's unfortunate, but I will say that particularly in this industry, success goes to those who persevere. Success goes to those who are persistent and keep trying and fight for success. And I think that's the best answer I can offer on that question.
Thank you very much, Zach. Once again, great presentation. Thank you so much for all the answers to the Q&A as well. Some great answers you gave. Also, just before we end this, wanted to acknowledge Daniel. I see your question in the Q&A. Unfortunately, the social equity program, we're not allowed to vet or screen investors or give you any sort of business advice when it comes to things like that. That's why we had this webinar with Zach Knox to give you all this wonderful information so that hopefully you got some tips and tricks on how to do your own sort of due diligence and kind of vet these people yourself. So yeah, I wanted to acknowledge that question, but
If
thank
I
you.
could, you've been the advice I would offer to, you said it was Daniel.
Yeah,
The advice
Dan.
I'd offer to Daniel right now is make sure that you take advantage of the pro bono legal program offered by the LA County Bar Association. And then a number of the subject matter experts like myself who work with DCR perform office hours where you can probably get a consult on some of these issues. So take advantage of the resources that the DCR is providing, even if they can't do the scrutinizing of the situation themselves.
Perfect. Thank you. So We hope you enjoyed watching this webinar on predatory practices, partnership issues, and vetting partnerships. We hope you will join DCR for the next webinar on acquiring compliant real estate, which is scheduled for Thursday, September 26th at 6 p.m. Additionally, DCR, we also have a in-person social equity training program summit. It's going to be at October 10th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. We'll be at Friendship Auditorium. For more information about that, please go to the website. We're also going to be sending out an email blast with the invite and more information to everyone who signed up to the listserv. For any questions you have, please contact dcr.sep@lacity.org or dcrlicensing@lacity.org or contact your licensing analyst directly. And also, like Zach mentioned, please take advantage of the resources. We posted some links in the chat so that you could sign up for pro bono, low bono legal services, as well as those coaching hours. And as Zach mentioned, he is a coach who is available for these sessions. So if you have more questions for him, be sure to sign up for coaching and you can meet with Zach. So thank you very much, everyone.